I am really less interested now, especially in like the persona Kasey Anderson of being like a person who sells my shit to people. I'm far more interested in just saying, hey, this is good work. I
Mm.
believe this to be very good work. I think that that merits your attention.
Ain't going back to Nashville. I'm happy where I live. Ain't going back to Nashville.
Oh, welcome to the Marinade, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. Each episode, we welcome musicians, actors, comedians, authors, visual artists, filmmakers, anyone who creates art to talk about how and why we make stuff. This is episode 180, and our guest for the third time, another hat trick guest, y'all, is Kasey Anderson. Kasey is a singer and songwriter from Portland, Oregon, whose latest record, To the Places We Lived, is one of my favorites of the year, and maybe my favorite thing he's done, and I'm a big fan. Kasey and I always tend to get lost in the good weeds when we chat, and this conversation is a great example. Y'all, it is my pleasure to bring you, for the third time, a conversation with Kasey Anderson. Hey, bud.
And nobody recognized me.
I got you. Do you do the thing where like
as
you want to
well.
dual record on
But I
that phone and
could
send you the audio? Do you
some
do
help
that
when
thing?
it came
No,
time to pay
Zoom
my bill.
Zoom will record 2 tracks and it works out fine. I mean, yeah, it's not the fanciest, but it's good enough. Yeah, I don't know. I think about that a little bit. Like right now we're at the end of October, right? As teachers, we call it Darktober. October is just pure hell for
Yeah.
secondary school teachers and primary school teachers. But and then today is the worst of those days, right? Like candy spilling out of kids' pockets and like just they're in costume and it's just, I don't know who that kid is there. He's got a mask. Like, I don't, like I think you lose kids. It's just like
Yeah.
it's pure hell, man. And thankfully it was a half day, so I got to get home and like decompress a little bit before getting to talk to you, which is a great way to continue my day after such a like stressful day. But anyway, I say all that to say that I've been really thinking about like, and this is a great jumping off point to talk about you and your career and your record. But I've been thinking a lot about like what's next for the Marinade, right? Like I've been doing this thing for, believe it or not, this is over 7 years now, and I started the idea came like almost 9 years ago, and I love it. It's still great. I still get to do this, and it's wonderful. But the landscape has changed so much, and I did not adapt with it. I
Yeah.
just had my head down doing the work because it's not my primary thing, right? And I'm not much of a visionary anyway. I'm always like 5 minutes behind whatever the next trend is or whatever. So, I think my buddy Jordan is a little bit younger than me, Jordan Foley, who's a wonderful songwriter and great dude. And we've been collaborating on a podcast called Life's Greatest Hits. And we're having a lot of fun with it. But I'm really struggling to figure out like how we gain traction and get more ears on it because it's a really cool idea and it's a lot of fun. But the thing about him that's really firing me up is that he's just so motivated to like go and do things and make things and figure out what that next step is and innovate. And it's got me excited because that's not really how my brain works. My brain is more focused on craft and not focused on how
Yeah.
do I get this thing out
Yeah.
there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to have somebody like that. I mean, either you got to be that person or you got to have someone that is like into that, or and excited about it in whatever way they're excited about it. The podcast thing, I mean, I can say that I sympathize with you folks who make podcasts that are thoughtful and considerate and, delve pretty deeply into life and creativity and things like that. You're in a place where I feel like a lot of us musicians were not so long ago, right? Where we saw the whole industry shift and it seemed like what people wanted from people who make things shifted along with it. And a lot of folks were like, oh, well, I don't know how to do that, or I'm not really interested in doing that. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. And I'm, like, not to go too long on this, but before To the Places We Live record came out, I took a lot of meetings with labels, because the Dangerous Ones thing had happened and people like remembered that I was a good songwriter. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the Dangerous Ones thing resulted in a lot of meetings for me. And in each of those meetings, people would be excited about what they heard of the record. People would be excited about the idea of me having this kind of career renaissance, rejuvenation, whatever. People were excited about the story. And then they would get to touring. And I would say, I don't really want to tour anymore. I'll do like half a dozen shows in 1 year. I'll do another half a dozen in the next year. And then they would start to talk about promotion. And I would say, they would say it's important to grow this audience. It's important to grow this audience. It's important to have content. Like, what are we going to do for visuals, whatever? And I would always say like, oh, I wrote 9 really good songs. That's the extent of the content I'm willing to create for this record. And that's it for me. That's
Yeah.
a wrap. I'm not going to be, and I have nothing against, there are people who do this stuff really effectively and really engagingly. I'm not going to be a person who looks at my phone, records a video of me saying like, hey guys, the record's out, come see me at the whatever. Adeem
Yeah.
does that really well. BJ does that really well. Lizzie No does that really well. So there's some folks out there who really, really do it in creative ways. I'm not one of those people. And that was the end of each of those meetings with labels. We would get to that point and I would say, I'm not going to tour and I'm not going to make fucking videos for Instagram or whatever. I'm not going to join TikTok. I'm not interested in that part of this business at all. And they would say like, oh, well, we can't put the record out. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Wow. Okay, so much I want to talk about there because I think I have a similar attitude to and bent to you in that regard. I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I've gone through just like my own personal hell the last couple of years, and I'm getting on the other side of it. Things are looking up, and I'm feeling a lot better, and my life is going quite well now, and I'm starting to recognize that, and my mental health is uh, is positively impacted by that. But for a couple years there was a point where I realized I was, to borrow from the Jason Isbell lyric, I was living inside my telephone. And that's not really how I was one of the last people that I know to get a smartphone. And I went back to a flip phone a couple years ago and I've been reevaluating my relationship with technology a lot because I mean, you and I connected because of Twitter
Mhm.
initially, right? I recently got to have John Moreland on, and he's been a dream guest. Well, that was just me sliding in his DMs. That was a connection there. And since then, he and I have been connecting, via
Mhm.
Instagram. And so I've been really grateful for those connections. But Kasey, I've been leaving my phone at home and treating it like a house phone, like a landline.
Oh, cool.
Buddy, it is a game changer. I bought an MP3 player. I did this about like 9 months ago, maybe almost a year ago, because I was going through the breakup of my 10-year partnership, and my phone kept reminding me of her. Right? They phone pictures, and there's no way around it. Like I'm just seeing her constantly, and I was so depressed and really going through it. So I bought an MP3 player, and I just like download stuff from Spotify, podcast or whatever, download some music on Tidal, have it right there with me and listen to it on my way to work. When I'm out and about, I don't even worry about it. I just have my phone at home and I'm telling you I'm so much calmer. And so that's the paradox though, right? Is that I also spend hours making each one of these episodes and I love it. But then to get above the noise, you got to have video content. And I just don't want to do it. I don't mind the facing, the talking into the phone.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't mind it, but I also don't want my goddamn phone around me. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah. I Man, okay, first of all, I'm gonna absolutely steal that like effective immediately because I bought a light phone a while ago. And I tried the light phone and it just didn't work for me. Just like just the act of texting was more complicated on that phone than I wanted it to be. And I do send, I send a lot of text messages to folks. But this is a great sort of bridge for me to try to get back to that, to not have, because I don't need, none of us do, none of us do need to have our phone on us at all times. I'm old enough to have lived before that was a thing.
Yep.
My friends called me after we got home from school, they would call me, let's meet here, play hoops. That was the extent of the conversation. I still use the phone that way. If someone calls me and they wants to chat, I'm livid. Like I'm like, this is for making plans only for me.
Yeah.
And I get that, like I get that that's not really a very thoughtful way to approach it. But this is all to say, this it's great. I think that's a great idea. To use it as a tool, to use it as you would a home phone, that's really cool. I also have, I mean, I want to double down on this. The phone facing video that folks do to try and like drive engagement can be cool.
Yeah.
There are genuine ways to do that. I gave some examples of folks who I think do that really well. It was just, for me, it goes against one of my own personal values and principles, which is I don't want to devalue the things that I made. I worked really hard to write 9 really good songs. Anything else I do, and again, this is just me, anything else I do that pulls the focus away from those 9 songs feels like a betrayal of that work to
Mm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I am really less interested now, especially in like the persona Kasey Anderson, of being like a person who sells my shit to people. I'm far more interested in just saying, hey, this is good work. I
Mm.
believe this to be very good work. I think that merits your attention. I don't have to dress it up any other way. Again, I'm fortunate to be in a place where like this is not my full-time job, so there's less that depends on it for me, which allows, it's a very privileged position for me to be in, but it allows me to do things like that, to say, no, this is a good record, these are good songs, people will find it or they won't. I think let's see what that does. Um, man, I know this is your show, and I don't want to get too sidetracky, but
Yeah.
I also won't ask you too much about your personal life. I mean, I'm aware of the breakup because you and I know each other a little bit outside of this.
Yeah.
But you posted this thing, I think on Threads, that I replied to, which was a really thoughtful question, and I have been thinking about it often since you had written songs. I think you didn't like name the thing, but you had written songs about that partner, I believe.
It's a different partner, but yeah.
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 Uh, yeah, you
Yeah.
had written songs about or this is a better way to say it. You had written songs about a partner that you were no longer with, and you
Yeah.
were kind of wrestling with how to, whether to take that work with you moving forward. And I think that was such a thoughtful question. And I think that I responded. I remember at least thinking and hopefully typing that, you know, I really connected to that because this record is about that kind of, it's
Yeah.
not necessarily about partnerships, but it's about to the places we lived. It's about trying to move forward while honoring the things that happened that led up to this, good or bad. And I want to know where you landed with that. Like, do you play the tune still? Do you think about the tune still, or did you have to shelve them for a while?
I play most of them. So what happened is I went through that 10-year partnership. We broke up. She left me. It was impossible. I went through the deepest depression. Casey, I didn't think I was going to survive, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't think I was going to make it. I knew intellectually I was going to get through it at some point. I know I'm resilient and I know I have an incredible support system. So I knew I was going to make it, but it didn't feel like it, right? And
Hmm.
then I met this woman who kind of helped me kind of get right and kind of helped me to see the old me and kind of get back to regain some of my confidence. And I fell deeply in love with her. It was a 6-month relationship. Um, it didn't work out for a lot of reasons. The reasons relationships don't work out.
Hmm.
But in that time, dude, she like one of the songs I wrote is called My Love Speaks in Lyrics because she just spoke in lyrics. I was constantly scribbling in my notebook, and then those were becoming songs. And I was so inspired by her and her spirit that like on a Saturday morning she would make breakfast and I'd sit out in the backyard and I'd write a song, and it was just they were just pouring out of me, man. It's never happened like that to me. Usually I have to sit down to the page and be deliberate and try to write something, but these were just pouring out of me. I wrote like 5 5 or 6 in a couple of weeks. And I played them out, and they were just really well received. And this is when I was still with her, and they were really well received. And then when we broke up, I went through that whole back and forth, but I kept playing them. And at first I kept playing them, I think almost as, and this is what sort of begged the question. I played them almost as like me not being willing to let go of the relationship. It was
Mm.
like it was immortalized in those songs. And so when I played them initially, it felt like, and when people connected with them, it felt like the relationship was still like kind of alive, even though she wasn't present in my life. I play them now. I've come to a place now where I feel like there's still a little bit of attachment to her. I can't deny that.
Mm.
But I play them now as just as a way of being grateful for the good things that happen. They're all love songs. They're all, gushingly about her. And it was, dude, it was real bad at times. I mean, very, very bad. Some of the things that happened. Um, and and yet I can still celebrate those good things. And I think those songs help me to appreciate how much she benefited my life instead of
Mm.
just thinking about like the nasty things she might have said to me, right?
Yeah.
Or done to me. And I'm really grateful for that because it's taken a few months, and honestly, it's taken until I would say the last couple of weeks. The last couple of weeks, and I've been playing once a month out at this place right down the street, my regular bar, and excuse me, we've had this folk night, and that's been part of the beauty of it too, is that we have this night where we all get together and we just sort of, I have a short set and then somebody else has a short set and we just kind of, and then we all jam. Like everybody just jumps
Mm.
up on each other's songs and sings and stuff. It's a beautiful community we've built. My
Yeah.
friend Renee has built this community. And so I think those songs now are a part of that community. She will get up and play with me, for example, and on those songs, she knows those songs. Um, and so it has taken on a different life now, and and it's helped me. The songs have helped me appreciate the good things I had with this woman and the positive impact she had.
That's cool. And I didn't, that's really interesting to me. I didn't know that she was also a musician and that she's now playing the tunes with you when you play them out sometimes. And
No, no, different girl. Different girl.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
I'm
okay. That
single
was
now,
I was like
Kasey. You got to keep making a flow chart to keep up with me, buddy.
I
I'm single for the first time in a decade. You got to, there's a,
yeah,
like
man.
Charlie Day with the strings.
Um, I really appreciate that. And I think this is obviously not an analog, very different experiences. But not no value attached to one more than the other. But I struggled a lot for a long time with really, really resenting and being ashamed of the period in my life where I was using really heavily and where I, had committed a fraud crime and where I was like not a good partner to partners, not a good friend to friends, not a good bandmate to bandmates, not a good son to my parents, not a good brother to my brother. And I lost track of the good things that happened during that time. And that's a long stretch of my life, like I used from the time I was 12 until the time I was 33, and that chunk of my life that was really pretty rough was several years. And I had to work really hard to remind myself that there were good times in there and that I can
Mhm.
honor those, I can give those the same weight that I give the things that happen that I'm not proud of or that were
Mhm.
painful for myself or other people. And I think that playing those tunes, not to therapize too much, but I think that playing those tunes, it sounds like gives you an opportunity to do the same, to give some weight to the beauty of a situation that was maybe not always so beautiful.
And it's not always, and that's the other thing is like not thinking of things as binary, right? Like
Hmm.
that's one of the that's one of the beautiful things about art is it helps me at least, and I think it does most of us to get out of that sort of good and bad and positive and negative binaries. Because life isn't that way. It exists in the gray. And yes, there are some hard lines that I'm going to draw in my life morally, ethically, and in other ways, but like thinking about that relationship was so extreme in the good and so extreme in the not good more so than any relationship I've ever had. The good times
Mm,
were better than
mm.
any good times I've had with anyone. The bad times were worse than any bad times I've had with anyone. And in between, there was a lot of beauty and a lot of sadness and it was a 6 month, like it was a powder keg, man. It
Yeah.
was like a whirlwind. And so art and writing about it, you know, cause I wasn't really writing about the good and the not good. I was only writing about the good when I was writing. And I don't have a desire to really write about the not good, right? I've got plenty of memories and plenty of scars from that. But it has writing about her and our relationship and still playing those songs helps me to process the complicated nature of our relationship.
Yeah. 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 We need a shirt that says boundaries, not binaries.
I like
Does
that
that
a lot.
exist yet?
I don't know, but if
Uh,
it doesn't, we need that. I
we're
like
gonna
that
be
a
rich.
lot.
We are
Yeah.
gonna be rich, buddy.
Yeah, man.
Um, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for talking about that. I
Hmm.
didn't want to like hijack your thing and ask you about yourself, but I've been thinking about that threads thing.
I appreciate it. And thank you for responding to it. I got some really good responses and there was a similar theme, I think, to them. I mean, most people that responded kind of said something similar, which is, you know, now they now exist as you know, as documents, but they're songs, you know, and I think, you know, that one song, there's a song that I don't want to say her name now because I don't uh at this point, you know, I want to kind of like put a boundary there.
Hmm.
But it was originally named after her. And there's I'm gonna rename it Canola Fields, even though McMurtry has that incredible song,
Yeah.
Canola Fields, because you know, I was wearing my Canola Fields shirt, my James McMurtry Canola Fields shirt, and she had told me this when we first started dating. She was like, "You should really go to Montana and drive through the canola fields. It's beautiful." And so that became a line in the song, you know, because it goes, because I was a vegetarian when I met her and I started eating meat. She influenced me to eat meat. And the line goes, "You should really eat meat and drive through canola fields in Montana in the spring." And when I sing that, everybody's face lights up because it's like
Mm.
it's such a sweet moment, you know, that she was like pointing at my shirt and kind of flirting with me and was like, "You should really drive through canola fields in the spring. It's lovely." Um, so I renamed it Canola Fields, but like that song, every time I play it now, I think of that moment. And I wrote that song watching we mentioned BJ Barnum. I wrote that song. BJ had a solo show in Jacksonville, right when I started dating this woman, and I was still very much hung up on my last relationship. You don't get over a 10-year relationship in 3 months. And I'm watching BJ play, and he was playing that song the first year or that first year. It's
Yeah,
on, you
yeah.
know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yep.
And it's, you know, he was telling the story about it, how it's all like about um that year of first after you lose someone or after a loss and how hard it is. And it's a gorgeous song, of course. You know, BJ always bringing it. And he was playing that. And I was just really thinking about my relationship. And then I was thinking about this new relationship. And I just took out my notebook and the whole song just came out right there. So now when I think of that song, I think of that BJ Barham show. I think of the whole thing, right? I think of
Yeah.
all of the beauty, right? And it's really beautiful. Everything that I poured into that is all just love and beauty. And so the song exists that way. And so thanks. Yeah, thank you for the question. I didn't
Yeah.
go down that road, but that's a
Yeah.
fun
Of
conversation.
course. I'm glad we got to. I'm glad we got to.
Yeah. Um, well, okay, so let's use that as a segue into talking about the record too, because I was thinking about this today. Because in the process of you know, doing research for this conversation, I went back and listened to your other records, which is something I do fairly often anyway. Your music is on heavy rotation here at
Thank
my
you.
apartment. Yeah, of course, man. And and I was like, is it my favorite of his? And it's so hard for me to say because I listen back to your catalog and those each record has meant something different along the way. I think the Hawks and Doves from a White Hotel is maybe my favorite just because it came at a time when you and I connected for the first time and
Mhm.
um I just it's just a good part of my life. Like when I think back to that record, I have such fond memories of how my life was going and I was really the show was fairly new and that kind of thing. Um and so I'm interested in I'm interested in how you view this record, especially it being your last, and like how, when you look back on your catalog, like where it fits for you.
Great question. Thank you. Um, I wrote it as a sequel to Nowhere Nights. I think Nowhere Nights is a really clear line of demarcation in my career as an artist. It's a pretty clear line of demarcation for me personally. Um, so Nowhere Nights was the record where, I mean, I guess Don't Look Back is on The Reckoning, the record that came before that, and Don't Look Back was the first song of mine that really people really responded to. It's just, it's like a song I still play. It's 17, 18 years old now. I still play it at shows.
Mm.
Nowhere Nights was uh, the record that came after that that's when I started to get pressed. That's when I started to have folks started to come to the shows. I was on good bills with folks. Things started to go kind of my way. And for a number of reasons, some having to do with substance use, some having to do with a mental health disorder that was then untreated, and some are just the nature of my personality that still exists. When that record became successful, I'm using air quotes, like relative to whatever else. When that record became successful, I thought, well, I don't want to be a songwriter dude. I don't want to be a singer-songwriter guy. I want to make band records. I want to make rock and roll records like I loved when I was growing up, like I still love. I'm tired of the sound of a voice and an acoustic guitar with some instruments behind them. Acoustic guitar
Hmm.
voice really centered in the record, really centered in the mix. This is what you're supposed to listen to. And then if there's an arrangement, it's kind of back behind it. I didn't like that. I'm just kind of like constitutionally opposed to the centering of an individual. And so I made the Honkies records, which was still Kasey Anderson but we made them, I tried to make loud rock records with a little bit of like some Americana stuff in there. And I know I lost some folks by doing that. Folks really
Mm.
wanted to hear story songs. They didn't really want, like blues-based rock riff records from me. Um, and then the Hawks and Doves thing was fully not my name, very much a band record, very much a collaborative process, very much a situation where I didn't feel comfortable having my name on the front of the record because I had been incarcerated. I had just gotten out, whatever. This record for me is a return to a conversation that I started with an audience at Nowhere Nights. Nowhere
Mm.
Nights songs are all very personal. The songs onto the places we lived are all very personal. I felt like if I was going to make another record, when I decided I was going to make another record, I thought, well, there were people who started to participate in a conversation with me when Nowhere Nights came out. And I was opposed to that for whatever reason. I didn't like feeling like people wanted to engage with me on a personal level. I felt really protective of my personal life. It's because I wasn't doing so great. I didn't want people
Yeah.
to see how I was doing,
Yeah.
but I felt really protective of my personal life. And I felt like I had given people too much access with Nowhere Nights. And so I wanted to put up a series of walls creatively, personally. With this record, I thought, there are people who came to my shows right after I got out of prison and thanked me for things, thanked me for songs. People who were so gracious to me in a situation that maybe didn't call for that. Who were far kinder to me personally, professionally than I felt I deserved at the time. And to a one, almost all of those people said, I hope you make another record like Nowhere Nights sometimes. And so for To the Places We
Mm.
Lived, I thought, okay, I will make a spiritual sequel to this record. And if it's really going to be my last thing, then that's a way to say thank you. And that's a way to like kind of close off those conversations with those people. So I don't know about favorites. I'm really proud of the To the Places We Lived songs. I think that there are a couple of songs on the record where after I finished them, I said, that's the best thing that I have ever written. This is the best thing that I've ever written.
Interesting.
And I think also it's the first record that Hawks and Doves record I made sober. This record I made healthy. I'm
Mm.
sober. I've been out of incarceration for a long, I have more time under my belt as a person whose mental health disorder is medicated and treated. Yeah, I've been in recovery longer. I was at a very healthy place when I made the record, and so I can hear that in the songs. Um, just in terms of personal preference, like I have a 4-year-old daughter who's going to be 4 pretty soon, probably by the time this is live.
Hmm.
Uh, she likes the Honkies records. She really likes like the rock and roll tunes, and so I've if she asks sometime to listen to them if we're in the car, and she'll say, "Daddy, I want to hear your music. I want to hear rock and roll," and so I'll put on the "Let the Bloody Moon Rise" or "Heart of a Dog," and I've come to really appreciate those records. I think that's another situation where I carried a lot of shame about my own personal shit that was going on when we were making those records, and it kind of marred the way that I looked at and think about the creative work. And when I go back and listen to them, I'm really proud of them and I really love those tunes. And so, like, for just pure, on the rare occasion where I'm in the car with my daughter and I'm listening to my own stuff, it's one of those records. And I really, really love. I love that band, and I still, have expressed this publicly. Wish that I had been in a healthier place, because I feel like coming off of that Counting Crows tour, like, people were excited about that band.
Hmm.
And we were really excited about the Let the Bloody Moon Rise record. And we were at a place where there was a lot of interest in the band. And I felt like, cool, this is going to be it, in as much as my career was ever going to have a quote unquote it. And I just, and then I went to treatment and then I went to prison, and that record didn't ever really get a proper release. Um, so this is all a very long-winded way of saying, uh, To the Places We Lived is the record I'm most proud of. Uh, a few of the songs on the record I think are the best songs that I've ever written. Maybe down the road it'll be like my favorite, quote unquote, my most enjoyable record of mine. Right now I really love the Honkies records. Like,
Hmm.
I'm kind of like regretting the retirement rap because when I listened to those, I was like, man, what if I just set up some amps in a room and wrote another 8 or 9 or 10 riff songs? So we'll see.
Ain't nobody stopping you but you, Kasey.
I know. That's I said that, and I've said that the other day to my friend, and she was like, "No one asked you to retire." Like, no,
Nobody,
no
nobody
one,
wanted
no one
this.
was like, no one was like, Kasey Anderson should hang it up, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. It's interesting that I'm glad to hear you say it's like so personal, because the very first note I have on my notes is that it feels like the most raw and confessional, in terms of like not raw production wise, raw like lyrically and story wise, raw. It feels like the most raw and confessional of your records, and I think that's why I have deeply connected with this album. I mean, I've listened to some version of this for several years. You
Yeah.
sent me these songs a long time ago, and so it's interesting to have this conversation now since it's just newly out, but I've spent a lot of time with it, and it's been interesting to me also because of that, the time, and also what I've gone through personally through that time. It's interesting to me to listen to the record now versus when I first got a hold of it in like 2021, or I don't remember when you first sent
Hmm.
it to me, but I want to say it was like 2021. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Um, but because I think like Leave an Echo, for example, might be my favorite song on the record, and I'm not sure it jumped out at me in that same way when I first heard it, right? But now there's something about, and I don't have my head around it completely why, but there's something about that particular song as I was listening to it again the last few days that I really connected with. Um, and so I'm interested in something you said earlier about we were talking about my situation with the songs that I'd written about this woman and our relationship, and then you were talking about, and you just kind of replayed a few of the times in your life where you weren't doing so well, but you were making great records, and and it wasn't all bad, right? You were on tour
Mhm.
with Counting Crows, and and there was a lot of good, and you're unpacking a lot of that on this record because it made me think of this 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 statement I've heard Joe Pug make a couple of times about Justin Townes Earl, and how he was like, man, it was so sad that Justin had his addiction issues, but man, we had some fucking fun. And then he would tell these stories, and it's like it's tragic, right? But it's also like, yeah, but there was a lot of good there too. You know, he's got that crazy story about them like getting drunk on Bon Scott's grave. Or I forget all the details,
Yeah,
but it's just like
yeah.
these wild stories, you know. But he also said he's like, man, Justin was a lot of fun. It's all very sad, and I'm interested in how you are now. We talked a little bit about this last time, but time has transpired since then, and you are, like you said, healthy now, and how you are processing those times now, and how you're able to look back on them um, now, the times when you were using and things maybe weren't as good as you want them to.
I think I mean over the years, the last time you and I talked would have been around the Hawks and Doves record, sometime around that, maybe a little after
It
that.
was we talked one time after. It was a couple. It was
Yeah.
yeah, a couple years after, maybe a year
Oh,
and
it
a
was
half.
maybe when the dangerous thing happened, we got back
I think it was
chatting
when you
together.
re-released the Bloody Moon when Let the
Oh,
Bloody Moon
cool.
Rise. Yeah. So it's still been a couple years.
Yeah. I think over the years, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, um, I have worked hard and learned to give myself more grace, to give other folks more grace. I really, really try to come from that positionality in most things. And so I
Mm.
think that that has made it easier to look back at myself with a little bit more kindness and care, and to do the same for the folks who I did harm to. I have said this in other interviews, but I can forgive myself, and that's important. And I can do the work that I have done to move forward in my life and to leave some things behind me and to live out amends in the ways that I live out amends. That doesn't change really what the people who were harmed by me carry around. If someone was
Mm.
financially victimized by me, it may not matter to them that I'm healthier now than I was then. It may not matter to them that I'm doing great, or that I'm working in a community and I'm trying to be of service to people, or the ways in which my life has changed may not matter to them. It may not matter to, I had partners to whom I was very dishonest, to whom I was very unfaithful. Those are folks I'm not in conversation with anymore, and it may not matter to them how well I'm doing. And so I have I try to have a lot of grace for that too, and to know that that's what a living amends is. A living amends is I just live my life differently and hope that it sort of ripples out into the world. But that's all to say that in softening in general, in trying to live my life from a position of giving more grace to myself and others in general, it makes it easier to look back at those times and go, yeah, I was unhealthy and I did harm, and some of the harm was intentional and some of the harm was unintentional, but also there was a lot of beauty. I made art that I'm still very proud of. I have friendships that survived. I have friendships that are stronger now than they were then because of the changes that I've made in my life and because of the grace that other people have given me, and vice versa. Um, and I think that that informs my creative work. I know that it informs the way that I live my life, and the work that I do in Portland and elsewhere in the communities that I live and work in. And I think it informs the songs. The songs on this record I think really, really resonate with a kind of grace that was not present on those other records. There's a lot of like sneer on the Honkies records, a little less on the Hawks and Doves records, but the Honkies records are delivered with a lot of sneer. And I don't
That's a
have that.
really good adjective. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not in these songs. I think that these songs are delivered with a lot of sincerity, and I think that that's kind of what makes them what they are.
Yeah. Man, yeah. As soon as you said that, I can hear it immediately, right? Like, but I don't know that I would have drawn that conclusion or picked up on it if you hadn't said it. And I'm gonna go back and listen to those Honkies records tonight, actually. Um, there's a letter in the press materials that you sent me about Back to Nashville, and um I'm interested in your relationship with Nashville, with also the sort of Americana. Um, the community, whatever that means now. And I'm interested in it from the perspective for me, it's interesting because like I said, I'm always 5 minutes behind Kasey, but I'm very seriously considering moving moving to Nashville. I know I'm like 15 years late. Um, but I'm also interested in the timeline for you, um, because I have this theory that like 2012, 2013, when it comes to this kind of music, the big umbrella Americana, kicked off really by both Isbell Southeastern and Sturgill Simpson's first two records.
Mhm.
Um, I think there was something, and I'm not the first person to observe this. There was something incredibly special happening at that time, and that it has spawned a whole bunch of incredible stuff. A whole generation of songwriters now that were inspired by that record, which makes me feel very old.
Yeah.
But but
Yeah.
I'm interested in like, were you around Nashville at that time? Like around that 2012, 2013, and what did it feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I toured with Isbell in 2011 and 2012.
Oh,
So
right
I
on.
watched like very much watched that happen in real time. I There was a night on the Counting Crows tour in this is going to be a little bit of a digression, but it gets to what you're asking about. There's a
Cool.
night on the Counting Crows tour. We had a night off in Boise before a Boise show, and Isbell's band was in town, and we went to go see him. And it was my band went and saw him, and the Counting Crows crew, and some of the Counting Crows guys. And it was like, I mean, there was probably 20 of us, and then there was probably 20 or 30 other people in the room. 50 people in a little venue in
Wow.
Boise. And there was another venue in town called Neurolux that was dark that night. And so I just called the folks at Neurolux and said, "Hey, this is Kasey Anderson. I'm in town. Jason Isbell's in town. If you'll turn the lights on and open the doors up for people and have someone do sound, we'll come in at like midnight and do sets." And so we went from his gig to my band and a couple of folks from Jason's band, and Jason went to Neurolux and played like Stones covers from midnight to close.
Holy
Uh,
shit.
and it was just me, Jason and I just each tweeted out, like that was at a time when we both had a bunch of Twitter followers, and we just tweeted out, we're going to be here at midnight. We're going to play until they kick us out. Uh, so that was late summer 2012.
Mm.
Played Americana Fest that same year, a month later. Jason's face was on the cover of the program. He was on the cover of the Nashville Scene. A few months later, after Southeastern came out, I saw him at a show in California at the Troubadour. Place was sold out. And I was like, okay, that's that. You're done playing to 50 people. You're never going to play to 50 people again in your life unless it's something that you intentionally want to. You're good. You're going to be good, buddy. And so I watched that. I mean, I watched that happen very much in real time, and was really, really cool. It was really cool because it's a person who I knew had worked really hard to get where they were, both
Mm.
personally and creatively, whose work I thought, in as much as a person can deserve anything in this world, whose work I thought really deserved that.
Mhm.
That record, I think it is almost impossible to speak hyperbolically about that record and about Jason's work.
Yeah.
Going forward too. Now, like anything that you say, any sort of praise that you give Jason or his work is deserved. Those are timeless, timeless songs that he's
Mhm.
writing, continued to write.
Mhm.
So that was really cool to watch. I think watching that happen, seeing the excitement around it, seeing the way that there are little pockets of community in Nashville. East Nashville has a really cool little creative scene. Todd Snyder's out there, Lily Hyatt was out there. Lizzie, recently moved to Nashville. So there's still
Mm.
a cool, Jamie Wyatt recently moved to Nashville. There's still a cool community or communities of folks who take care of each other. Joy Oladokun's out there. so on and so on. There's a lot of folks out there doing good work and taking good care of each other. What the song Back to Nashville is about, what I say I'm not going back to, is um, Nashville as an institution or as a construct. There is this idea that I think is pitched to everyone of Americana as an antidote to commercial country music. Americana as more authentic than commercial country music, as more steeped in tradition and carrying forward the tradition. And sure, certainly, Allison Russell, Carolina Chocolate Drops, Lizzie, Jason, folks like that are in fact carrying forward a tradition that existed a long, long time ago. Where I think that selling of Americana fails is that there is still a group of folks, journalists, folks at the Americana Music Association, whoever, who kind of get to decide who the next person gets to be that is in front of everybody. And again, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the work is undeniable. Allison Russell, I think, undeniably, Allison would have been where she is now. The work is just too good for it not to be. Isabel, same. Lizzie, no, kind of the same. BJ, the same for a different reason. BJ does great work, also works harder than anyone to make sure that folks have access to the things that he makes. That's a whole different thing. But there's a degree to which, it feels very much like, oh, they decided, and this is not a dig at Brandi Carlile at all, whose songs are incredible and whose voice is incredible. But like there was a time where it was like, okay, clear. It has been decided that Brandi Carlile is the person who's going to be centered in the Americana, in conversations about Americana. And like folks would not move off of that for a while. And again, not a criticism of Brandi's work, kind of just a criticism of how we're sold this sort of idea of one genre as authentic and another genre as manufactured. And I think that when it gets down to the actual machinations of the business part of that, there's not an especially discernible degree of difference. Tunes are better, I think, among my, like my friends write better tunes than the folks who are writing contemporary country songs. I don't know that the business part of it is all that different.
Oh, that's really interesting. What about like culturally? I mean, how does that translate culturally in Nashville, in terms of like what it was like back then versus maybe how it is now? And I don't know how much time you spend there now, but you're certainly connected to people who live there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a line in the song, yeah, some friends of mine made good out there, and Lord, I'm glad they did. That's very true. That's for real. I am so proud of and happy for my friends who were out there, who are out there, who found success and had their work recognized. I think, culturally, it feels like a movement in Nashville that's still really grounded in community. And I love that about it. Like Margot posted from Sturgill's show. She just went and seen Sturgill. Jason does that 8-night residency at the Ryman every year, and the support acts are always incredible. And, folks who were really excited to have the opportunity and who maybe wouldn't have been in front of that audience otherwise. And things like that happen on micro and macro levels that are really, really inspiring to me and really, really heartening to me. So I think it's cool to have an example that can still be done, and to go back to like Brandi too, like Allison, and there's all these folks that sort of like are in community with Brandi who are really, really reverent of one another, and that's really cool too. But again, like I think it creates a situation where in some ways it creates a scarcity of opportunity because we're made to believe that there's only so many people can make it, and here are the folks who've already made it, and so I'm sorry, the roster's full for right now, so you're going to keep playing the 5 spot for the rest of your life, which cool,
Yeah.
a lot of folks happy to do that. So it creates that kind of dynamic, which is not a thing that's created by artists. Again, that's a thing that's created by the business side of the industry, because I've never heard I mean, artists are competitive. We're competitive with each other, but I've never heard another artist, at least not one that I respect, say like, no, there's no room for anybody else. Bus is full. You know what I mean? I've never
Yeah.
heard anybody
Yeah.
say that, oh, that person doesn't deserve to have their
Yeah.
songs heard. Never heard that from any of the folks that I hang with, that I have worked with in the course of my career.
There's analog in podcasting with that too. The people that I respect, nobody's like, man, I hate that there's competition or whatever. Like I always encourage people, if you got something to say, I'll help you get there. If you
Yeah.
know, for free, I'll
Yeah.
tell you what to do,
Yeah.
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 Uh, yeah. And so I think that like to the degree to which the communities in Nashville are informed by that is really, really cool. Reminds me some of what I know about the Greenwich Village scene in the 60s. Obviously, I was not there for that, but based on what I've read, seems sort of some sort of communal parallels there. But I think it also creates a situation where like this is not true. I'm going to say this as an example,
Hmm.
right? This is not a thing that I feel I